Good morning. Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today. This is our second hour of the show. Game Time Decisions is coming up 11 a.m. Eastern. We have plenty of afternoon baseball, the Final Four, 6 p.m. Eastern, NBA games as well. Davis and I here along for the ride. Davis, we've got a preview coming up of daily fantasy. The other thing that I would say, but by the way, as we start the show here, is we have the Texas Open going on right now. I don't know if you're engaged in that, Davis. But next week, it's time for the Masters. Masters less than a week away at this point.
Masters less than a week away. I mean, Craig, I'm locked in. I'm locked in. I'm already firing bets, making content plans for the week. My best friend from back home in Kansas City is coming up for the weekend. We are going to be kicking back and watching, pretty much every single hole. The tournament going on right now used to be like a real preparation for the Masters. Used to be a lot of guys would play. You'd have European guys coming over and playing so they could get used to the time zone and everything, all like that. They would they would shave the greens down real fine, bunch the rough up real good. I mean, it's not exactly playing like that this week, although they did do their best because the field is not blowing through this course through two rounds. Akshay Bhatia is 11 strokes under par. No one else on the court better than 6 under par, which I actually love. I don't know how you feel about this, Craig. I greatly prefer a golf tournament where the winning score is like minus 15, minus 16, minus 17, as opposed to like, the Rocket Mortgage Classic where we're watching, 28 under par, 29 under par. It's just, who makes the most 7-foot birdie putts. But yeah, I mean, come on, so locked in for the Masters. And it'll be the first time that we get to see John Rahm play all year. But Koepka, I mean, I guess you could watch them play. They are technically playing a live golf event in Miami right now. I'm not watching it, but I guess you could.
All right, so now let's move on. Let's get back to baseball here and take a look at the slate, some of the matchups here today. We'll start off with the premier matchup of the day in the National League. I guess Diamondbacks Braves tonight could be, but Dodgers Cubs in the afternoon. Yoshi Yamamoto bounced back in his last start. This is start 3 for him against Wicks of the Chicago Cubs, Davis. And, certainly this is where you look at Yamamoto, probably you did on the buy low initially after that first start that he had overseas. He's been much better since then.
He has been much better since then. I mean, I will probably be locked in to this one because he was so bad in that first start. They yanked him pretty quick. He was able to get through 5 innings against the Cardinals. Got a bunch of swinging strikes in that one, and got. I mean, I don't know how many I've seen like this. 15 strikes looking. I mean, how many do you get strikes looking in an average start? Like that is that's pretty impressive. I mean, obviously this is a little bit easier of a matchup against Chicago Cubs than going against the Padres or whatever. But I just find his starts in general fairly fascinating, right? Like I just want to be tuned in. I feel like he's one of the biggest questions of the season because the Dodgers just have this order that's a little bit up in the air. They've got guys in, they've got guys out. It's like being a Dodgers pitcher the last couple of years has been being like a final destination thing. Like either you're going to get like a domestic violence charge or you're going to get injured. Or like what's going to happen to Tyler Glass now? It's like sure Tyler Glasnow is available now, but for how long? So if Yamamoto is able to give them 30 starts, I think that's money well spent.
All right, let's move on to the Orioles and Pirates today. Tyler Wells, pretty good pitcher for the Orioles, and to get wins in fantasy, this guy just has to go 5 innings because it's the Orioles. Pittsburgh's 5th starter, Davis, goes today. Bailey Falter. I was not all that impressed with his last start that he made, walking guys. Saw this one in Miami. Falter, by the way, would be that guy, Davis, that if Skeens came up, he would take his spot in the rotation. So I don't know. Is this a stack for the Orioles today? Maybe. I don't know. This is my temptation here.
Yeah, I like that idea a good bit. I don't know if you feel this way, but I'm following what's going on with the Orioles right now with just such an intense curiosity because we've not had very many teams like this in Major League Baseball history where their farm system is so flush with great players to the point that there's not even spots in the lineup for all I mean, obviously there was that great, 26 runs scored by the AAA team the other day. You know, you've got Kirkstad and Jackson Holiday and some of those guys who have already played. You know, Kirkstad has already played a little bit in Major League Baseball. I mean, I find the whole experience fascinating. I loved what they did with Corbin Burns, but every time I look at their roster, I watch them, I'm like, can we get less terrible pitching involved? Like, do we not have to subject ourselves to these same like retreads who have been on the Orioles since they were a terrible team? So I mean, look, Tyler Wells, if you have a good season, you know, more power to you. Right now, he's like the results he's had through one start, like he's been fine. So I just watch all their pitchers with a real close curiosity.
All right. Well, Kevin Gausman, there was some worry that he wouldn't be ready for the start of the season. Indeed, he pitched very well his first time out for the Blue Jays. One of the elite pitchers in the American League, Davis, goes up against the Yankees in Clark Schmidt. Yankees obviously were not going to win every game this season after the hot start they got off to. But an intriguing game nonetheless tonight to see if Gausman can do it in the Bronx.
Very, very intriguing. And it is, do you just ever take these moments to step back and remember, like, when Kevin Gausman was like the punchline to a joke? He was just like this guy who would just come in for the Orioles and he would just give up. Like, it would be like the old Disney animation of just like home run after home run after home, and the guy just could not do anything to get anyone out. So I do kind of always love the reinvention of Gausman as guys like, you know, led the league and fielding independent pitching and stuff. I'm very curious to see what happens with the start, because like at Yankee Stadium, it's no one likes pitching it. Garrett Cole doesn't like pitching it. No one likes pitching at Yankee Stadium. It's a brutal spot to have to pitch in. So I do watch these starts pretty closely.
All right, finally, Diamondbacks and Braves tonight. Talk about focus. My gosh, the Braves are going to need Max Fried in a big way if Strider is out for any period of time. Bad news if you have Max Fried in fantasy, Davis, is that you got to eat that start. Good news is it can't get any worse, man, for Max Fried at the start of the season.
Can't definitely cannot get any worse. I mean, I was more looking at the other side of this game. Brandon Pfaadt he was one of these guys that the fantasy baseball guys love, because he's so high in what is it, Enos Aris' stuff plus. He just got like the nastiest stuff. He has a very hard time controlling it. You know, is not always able to control the walk. So again, another guy from a fantasy baseball perspective that I think I would maybe like take a look at the over on his strike. I bet it's very low actually versus the Braves. I bet it's like 3.5 or 4.5. So I'd take a look at that, but I'll be locked in on this one.
Okay, let's take a quick time out here on the show, and when we return, Davis will reveal his daily fantasy lineup for this Saturday in Major League Baseball. So stay with us here on the grid. Of course, coming up a little bit later in the show, got fantasy reality and also Gray Albright from Razzball. Be right back. Great.
NC State, the Cinderella story continues.
It creates a double team and then gets an assist. 3 assists already. Everything's going through the big man.
Maybe one of the most dominant runs now with double-digit wins and 2 straight NCAA tournaments we have seen in quite some time in the Big Ten.
Zach Edey does throw elbows. Zach Edey does duck in with his shoulder. Zach Edey does initiate a lot of contact.
Bama runs a style that can challenge them and upset them.
Only on SportsGrid.
Jason Tatum has games where he has stinkers. He shoots a 4 for 16. Jaylen Brown in the playoffs gets exposed because he can't go left. Porzingis gets old. Sometimes Jrue Holiday's not consistent. Al Horford, father time to catch up. That being said, I still think they're going to the NBA Finals and winning it. And I'm a Knicks fan. I hate the Celtics with all of my might.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis owns it. They beat them 5 straight times, and Memphis is awful. So what does that say about the Bucks? They are the most overrated team in the NBA, hands down.
Michigan and Boston College, there's going to be goals scored in this game. But, with that being stated, the total's up to 7.5 right now. I got to go under 7.5 here, Scott.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort
Night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today. It's that time in the show where we give out a daily fantasy lineup for the slate in Major League Baseball. And it's a little convoluted. Baseball is a little bit different for those of you who never played daily fantasy than some of the other sports because the times start so differently. Like the NFL sort of clear cut, NBA more or less clear cut, hockey as well. But Davis, which slate has piqued your interest today?
All right, so we are going with the largest slate on DraftKings tonight, which is the 7:05 Eastern Time, 6:05 Central Time locking night slate. There are multiple slates that you can play on DraftKings today. There's a noon slate, there is an afternoon slate, but we are going with the night slate on DraftKings tonight. It's got the biggest prize pools available, and of course, look, it's got our first Coors Field game of the year, so we had to be locked in for the first Coors Field game of the year.
Yep, definitely so. Nolan Jones, man, a lot of errors start to hear for him, my guy. Come on, man, got to pick it up. All right, so I'll go through the names here, and then Davis will tell us some of the thinking here. Again, this is the night slate over on DraftKings, so for those of you looking to play the early, this is not it for you, but we'll start off with the Texas Rangers, another big Adolis Garcia game last night, by the way, for them. Gray, starting pitcher for Texas, John Gray, 7,200. Miller on Seattle has been fantastic, 9,300. Gabby Marino behind the plate at catcher, 3,800 for the Diamondbacks against Max Fried, who we just talked about. Chris Bryant looks like the only Rockies player Dave's going with today, 4,400 on DraftKings. He's playing first base for them this season. And then Ha-Seong Kim at 4,400 for the San Diego Padres at the second base position. All right, Davis, let's talk first about the pitching, and then we'll move into some of your early hitters.
Yeah, pitching is pretty interesting here on this slate. So guys who are not included, the aforementioned Kevin Gausman, who we talked about in the last slate. Max Fried is pitching at home against Diamondbacks. Michael Wacha is going. Garrett Whitlock is going. And I thought about toying with some Gausman lineups. I'm not as interested in Fried. I don't think Fried has the strikeout stuff for me and want to pay $9,100 DraftKings dollars for. So instead went with John Gray, who actually is generally a pretty daily fantasy friendly starting pitcher in the sense that you're going to know pretty early on in the slate. You got a good team, you got a bad team, because his blow-up starts are pretty blow-uppy. and his good starts are going to include a lot of strikeouts. He is a higher whiff rate starting pitcher. I mean, even when the guy is getting blown up, he is going to generate some swinging strikes, and he does have an incredibly difficult matchup against the Houston Astros. But the bottom of that Astros lineup actually has a good bit of swing and miss in it from the catcher and the corner outfield spots. So I do like that. I mean, look, you got to get through Bregman and Altuve and Tucker and Jordan. Like, it's not easy, but you are getting a nice discount there at 7,200. And I actually just straight up prefer Bryce Miller over the other expensive starting pitchers here. He was not great. Gave up 6 hits in 5 innings against Boston to start the year, but he was one of the surprises of he was one of the surprises of the season. But his issue is home runs. He got 16 swinging strikes last week, even in a start where he gave up multiple home runs. So if he keeps the ball inside the yard, we are feeling very good there. Gabby Moreno, we've got him with the platoon advantage against Fried. I mean, really, he just is one of the few catchers below 4,000 who has a good lineup order and actually has like plus plate skills. Moreno will probably end the year above league average in weighted on base average. Chris Bryant, I mean, look, it's not going to be fun to watch Chris Bryant. Chris Bryant is not going to be a guy we are building our fantasy baseball teams around this season, but look, he hit a home run on the 5th against Tampa Bay. He's at home. He's just underpriced. I mean, a guy, even with Chris Bryant's declining skill set, at home with the platoon advantage in Coors should be like 5,200, 5,300. He's not. So we are riding with Bryant there, although I do prefer the Tampa Bay side of this game. And Ha-Sung Kim, I mean, Craig, I know, he just is one of the most underrated players in fantasy baseball. He runs. He hits for power. He has a good lineup spot and a good order. I think a pretty good matchup here against the San Francisco Giants. So $4,400 for Kim. We are loving it.
All right, so Kim is in, and then Davis is going to sprinkle in some Tampa Bay players here for the rest of the slate here. Isaac Paredes of the Rays, 5,000 at third base on DraftKings. John Birdie has moved his way from Miami to New York, off to a nice start. He's 3,000. Wyatt Langford of Texas, the young rookie, 4,200. Harold Ramirez of the Rays, also at 4,300. And the stack is complete with Jose Siri at 4,400. So, naturally with the Rays, the other part of this, Davis, is knowing the Rays, probably fair to say if you're going to use this lineup, make sure you check back in around like 3 o'clock because with the Rays, you never know who's going to play. But that being said, why the Rays stack today?
So the Rays are they're traveling to play in Coors Field, where if you're very new to baseball, very new to daily fantasy baseball, Coors Field is played at an insane elevation, which just makes it just makes it a lot easier to score runs. It also has this big, giant outfield, which makes it very difficult to generate strikeouts. So of course, it's actually one of these weird things where if Coors Field was played at a normal elevation, it still would actually tilt towards being a batter-friendly park because of the way the dimensions are built. And on top of that, you have the fact that the Rockies just dead stink. Ryan Feltner is going to be the starting pitcher for them today. Ryan Feltner is just like a very career. His career ERA is over 6. I mean, that's where we're at with the Colorado Rockies. The bullpen is not any better. The concern you would have, obviously, with the Rays is a lot of these guys. I mean, even Isaac Paredes, who came out of nowhere to hit 30 home runs for them last season out of the depths of the Detroit Tigers organization, that he can get platooned, he can get pulled, right? I mean, we don't know based on the game specifics. Okay, is this guy going to get, if it's a high leverage plate appearance and he doesn't have the platoon advantage in the 7th inning, he might get yanked, which I actually think feeds into the Tampa Bay Rays salary. It's why we're getting a discount on Paredes. It's why we're getting a discount on Ramirez. Now, Jose Siri probably will bat 8th or 9th, I'm imagining. Obviously, that is going to keep him relatively lower owned. But Jose Siri, I mean, Craig, he would be a guy, if the Rays just for whatever reason they said, you know what, we gotta be in our bonnet. We're just gonna lead Jose Siri off for a whole year. We're giving him 650 plate. I mean, would he be a second-round pick in fantasy baseball? Probably. I mean, last season as a 9-hole hitter in 364 plate appearances, he hit 25 home runs. He stole 12 bases. Now only a 222 batting average, career 224 batting average. So it's not great on that front. But he just has a very, very good fantasy baseball skill set, and you're going to add extra plate appearance expectation when you're at course. And Birdie, you're very familiar with John Birdie's work. This guy, when he is in the lineup, that dude's stealing a base. What was he had 48 stolen bases 2 years ago in like 400 plate appearances. I mean, he's the best.
Yeah, and last year banged up a little bit. Sorry to see him go from Miami, but gets over to New York. All right, so that's the daily fantasy lineup on DraftKings today. Make sure you get it in, and also check to make sure all of those players, by the way, are in the starting lineup. Very important for any daily fantasy league at this point. All right, coming up next, it's time for us to check in with some true or false questions. We call it Fantasy Reality. Then we've got Gray Albright, and then the SportsGrid 60. As a reminder, tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. Eastern, Joe Pisapia, Matt Stryker, they're right back with you here on our next edition of Fantasy Sports Today. And they got you covered, and we'll recap Saturday and get into Sunday slate as well. We got more Fantasy Sports Today coming up with Davis and I right after this quick break. So stay with us here on SportsGrid. Don't go away.
Break. NC State, the Cinderella story continues.
Creates a double team and then gets an assist. 3 assists already. Everything's going through the big man.
Maybe one of the most dominant runs now with double-digit wins and 2 straight NCAA tournaments we have seen in quite some time in the Big Ten.
Zach Edey does throw elbows. Zach Edey does duck in with his shoulder. Zach Edey does initiate a lot of contact.
Bama runs a style that can challenge them and upset them.
Only on SportsGrid.
Jason Tatum has games where he has stinkers. He shoots a 4 for 16. Jaylen Brown in the playoffs gets exposed because he can't go left. Porzingis gets old. Sometimes Drew Holiday's not consistent. Al Horford father time to catch up. That being said, I still think they're going to the NBA Finals and winning it. And I'm a Knicks fan. I hate the Celtics with all of my might.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis owns it. They beat them 5 straight times. And Memphis is awful. So what does that say about the Bucks? They're the most overrated team in the NBA, hands down.
Michigan and Boston College, there's going to be goals scored in this game. But, with that being stated, the total's up to 7.5 right now. I got to go under 7.5 here, Scott.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort
Night.
of has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports today here on SportsGrid. Gray Albright coming your way from Razzball in about 15 minutes from now. Before we do that, let's ask ourselves some fantasy baseball questions and maybe some betting questions as well. Why not? It's time for fantasy or reality. All right, well, Mike Trout is headed right to the Hall of Fame the day he retires, Davis. You could just pencil it in, whatever it is, 4 years, I think it's 5 years after you retire, he's in. Trout did not play a ton last year. He did not play a ton the year before, and he doesn't have his buddy Ohtani around this year. I thought the Angels would be absolutely horrific. They're off to an okay start. Let's ask the question, fantasy or reality? Mike Trout will win the American League Comeback Player of the Year. Right now, over on FanDuel, it is plus 420. Is this fantasy or reality?
I mean, I always kind of have a tough time with these awards where it's like, okay, what are you coming back from? Are you coming back from being terrible? Right? Because that's you see this a lot of the time in the NFL where a guy like Geno Smith, comeback player of the year. Geno, what were you coming back from? You were just coming back from being bad. Just like not a personal circumstance, not an injury, just from being bad. So I'm looking at like, okay, what do we got here? A lot of these other guys are coming back from injuries as well. I mean, it's a nice story for Trout, and I mean, baseball has really done him such a disservice. Like Mike Trout should be one of the most famous athletes alive, and he just absolutely is not. He's the favorite right now. I'm going to take the field. I'm going to take it's just too easy to take the field here. I'm going to say one of these other guys wins it. You know, how about my boy Vinny P, the Kansas City Royals, coming back from injury for a triumphant 81 win Kansas City Royals team, giving the old middle finger to Jackson County, Missouri. Let's go Vinny P for comeback player of the year.
Yeah, I'm going to say fantasy too. Just too easy to take, as Davis said, the field at this point. And Trout, by the way, looks good. Stealing bases now for the first time in a while. Maybe he gets 20 stolen bases this year. It seems like he's willing to run a little bit more. But on something like this, a bet like this, you have so many options to take out there. And you probably can get better odds on some as well. So I will say fantasy there. Okay, now the New York Yankees start off the season with a 4-game sweep in Houston, Davis. That is not easy to do. So naturally, you are never going to get good odds on the Yankees at this point. Now, again, this week has been a little bit different than last week, and you're not going to win every single game in baseball. Juan Soto off to the great start as well. Fantasy or reality, the Yankees on FanDuel should be favored to win the American League. And by the way, I'll give you the odds. New York plus 360, Houston plus 370, Baltimore now up to third at plus 650, and Texas at 7-1.
No shot. Easiest fantasy in the history of well, I don't know. There's probably been easier ones. This one's pretty high up there, though. I mean, these are the teams right now. I would take the Astros, Orioles, and Rangers straight up at better odds. I think the Yankees are closer to the Mariners, Twins, Blue Jays, Rays caliber of team than they are that top tier. I think the Astros, Orioles, and Rangers are sort of a tier of their own. I mean, the Yankees have huge injury issues up and down their lineup, right? Their best players, Judge, Stanton, Rizzo, are all on the wrong side of 30. They're all on the wrong side of having chronic injuries. I mean, Judge and Stanton, basically, you can just pencil in. They are missing 30 games a year, 40 games a year. And people, by the way, always roll their eyes at the idea of Stanton of being one of their best players. Stanton is such a good power hitter that with a 200 batting average, he can have above league average OPS plus. That is how good of a power hitter he is. And Garrett Cole, in my estimation, is not going to play baseball this season. I am shipping the fantasy here. I am not buying on the Yankees.
Yeah, my opinion is not going to change after 1 week of baseball. Very impressive week, I would say, for them, but not going to change. So, look, I would put Houston ahead of them. My pick in the American League is Baltimore to win. I got to tell you, the Texas Rangers look strong again, man. Like, I mean, maybe we're just underestimating them completely. I know they didn't do a lot in the offseason. They're 7-1. And by the way, some other team could jump into the mix here too. So I am going to say fantasy. And by the way, as I said on my other show this past week, the worst time you could ever get on the Yankees would be now. Like you want to wait a little bit to a slump like of some kind where maybe they're 500, a game above, a game below, something like that. So I'm going to say fantasy here. Pirates get off to that great start off the season 5-0 in Major League Baseball. And if you remember last year, at the end of April, the Pirates had one of the best records in the National League. May, it was okay too. And then all of a sudden, things just sort of dipped. And at the end of the year, the Pirates were who we thought they were. Now, this year, they definitely look better. They've added some extra pieces. They've fortified their bullpen. And they have a young player coming up that can potentially help them down the stretch. Fantasy reality, Davis, the Pirates, who can get this at plus 225, will win 80-plus games this season. Also remember, the schedule not what it used to be. They don't have as many games against the Brewers and the Cardinals and the Cubs. It's a little bit more unbalanced, or balanced, I guess is what they're calling it now. Fantasy reality, Pirates get to 500 this year.
It's very hard for me to reverse a lot of what I know about the Pirates organization, which is that for a long time, the Pirates have mishandled and mismanaged good, strong players. The last time they won more than 76 games was in 2018. The last time they won more than 82 games was back in 2015. That was the last time that they had made the playoffs. That was back, your Clint Hurdle, Andrew McCutchen, Pittsburgh Pirates. I want to believe. I want to believe because I do like a lot of their young, talented players. O'Neal Cruz is a fascinating guy. He's a literal 6'6" middle infielder. You get none of that in Major League Baseball these days. And I just I have a deep affinity for Scott Farrell. I love doing his show every day, and it would make him so happy if the Pirates were able to do this. So I'm saying it. I'm going to say reality. They find a way to get it done.
Yeah, I'm going with this. I think this is a reality. The Pirates.
Yeah. So I think that I think that'll definitely go that way. I'm gonna go ahead and guess that Craig is gonna go against this. That Craig knows that there's absolutely no chance. All right, and another one that Sam did just for me, custom fit. Cole Ragans of the Kansas City Royals finishes the season as a top 20 fantasy pitcher. Now, again, if you're not paying super close attention to baseball, this might take you a little bit by surprise. Why is this guy who used to be, a reliever for the Texas Rangers, who actually got traded for Aroldis Chapman, I believe, why is he a top 20 pitcher in fantasy baseball? Well, the guy entered into the rotation for the Kansas City Royals last season and immediately basically became the best strikeout starting pitcher in fantasy baseball. 31% K rate last season for the Kansas City Royals, 33% K rate this season. His career batting average allowed is a sub 200 as a starter. I mean, the guy is absolutely unbelievable. I have a clear reality for top 20 starting pitcher, but the better example might be, could it be a top 10 starting pitcher? Could it be a top 5 starting pitcher? Should we be betting on Cole Ragans to win the American League Cy Young? Remember, there is precedent for this, Craig. Zach Greinke won a Cy Young for the Kansas City Royals on a terrible Royals team. Not even a good Royals team when he won it. Right now, he's only 10-1 to win the award. I am backing Cole Ragans' clear reality here.
Yeah, I would probably say top 10. Yeah, no, I look, this guy's great. Now, if I'm not mistaken, did they get Cole Ragans for Chapman? Is that how that deal went?
That's how it worked. Yeah.
Chapman's been traded for some really good guys in the past and has won the World Series. Gleyber Torres, I think, was involved in the other deal. So, man, anytime Chapman gets dealt, but anyway, this guy's a really, really good pitcher and really good deal by the Royals. I don't know that they can go the whole way through with one or two guys in terms of starting pitching, but I am with you there. Circling back, by the way, to the Pirates, I'm also going to say that they have an 80-plus win season. Chapman, Bednar, that bullpen that they have, some really nice little pieces that they have in the outfield. Connor Joe's gotten off to a nice start there. You mentioned Henry Davis earlier in the show. Skeens comes up. I think they got a shot, man. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs or anything like that, but I really do like that plus 225. I think there's a chance of that happening. And by the way, what kind of message do you want to send to your fans and to the team if you're close? I think Pirates could go for it a little bit. Maybe not huge, but maybe a little bit. All right, coming up next, Gray Albright weighs in on the first week of the fantasy baseball season officially in the books. So make sure you stay tuned to that. Then we got the SportsGrid 60 and game time decisions coming your way at 11 a.m. Eastern right here on SportsGrid. This is Fantasy Sports Today, every Saturday morning, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern, and Sunday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern. In fact, tomorrow's show, Joe Pisapia has his day off. WrestleMania, of course, is coming up this weekend. So we got George Kurtz and Matt Stryker handling the controls. And then I'm back with you Monday morning for a preview of the Final Four. The championship night is coming up on Monday night, so make sure you stay tuned to that as well. All right, we'll be right back. More fantasy talk. What does Gray Albright think about the first week of the fantasy season? Is his teams in first and last? Does it matter? Probably not. But we'll hit on that next. Don't go away.
Great. NC State, the Cinderella story continues.
Creates a double team and then gets an assist. 3 assists already. Everything's going through the big man.
Maybe one of the most dominant runs now with double-digit wins and 2 straight NCAA tournaments we have seen in quite some time in the Big Ten.
Zach Edey does throw elbows. Zach Edey does duck in with his shoulder. Zach Edey does initiate a lot of contact.
Bama runs a style that can challenge them and upset them.
Only on SportsGrid.
Jason Tatum has games where he has stinkers. He shoots a 4 for 16. Jaylen Brown in the playoffs gets exposed because he can't go left. Porzingis gets old. Sometimes Drew Holiday's not consistent. Al Horford father time to catch up. That being said, I still think they're going to the NBA Finals and winning it. And I'm a Knicks fan. I hate the Celtics with all of my might.
Betting above the rim. Only on SportsGrid.
Memphis owns it. They beat them 5 straight times. And Memphis is awful. So what does that say about the Bucks? They're the most overrated team in the NBA, hands down.
Michigan and Boston College, there's going to be goals scored in this game. But, with that being stated, the total's up to 7.5 right now. I got to go under 7.5 here, Scott.
Pharrell Coast to Coast. Only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from 3 on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not 1, but 2 coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Welcome back to Fantasy Sports Today on SportsGrid. Craig Mish, Davis Maddock. We got Gray Albright on the show. We're going to chop it up with some fantasy baseball talk. And Gray, I got my Razzball shirt in the mail. I think it was last week, maybe at the end of last week. So thanks again for another T-shirt there. I'm going to ask next year, by the way, for an upgrade to a large, if you don't mind. I know I'm not the biggest person, but I'm just saying, Gray. Like, my son fits better into that shirt than me.
I'll stop sending you the female small.
I mean, it's fine. It's a really nice shirt, and I get it. But going out in public looking like I don't know. Anyway, okay. So let's get into some fantasy baseball talk here. Talk about some early breakouts in the early part of the season. Look, a player that I actually like pretty much, and in the industry, I would say Gray, and I can tell Davis is too. The Royals have been really hesitant to trade this player. There's been a lot of interest in trading for this player, Michael Garcia, just because he doesn't really have like a true position, because Witt is at shortstop, and it's like, do you make him your everyday guy at third? But he's off to a great start. He's got 3 home runs, 8 runs driven in. I'm not really that surprised. I don't think he's going to hit 30 home runs, but he's a nice player for the Royals, and in a position where they're competing, I still think he'll probably get some at-bats every day, and a nice start for him, Gray.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, I don't think he's going to hit 30 homers either. Maybe 45, 50. No, I'm joking. Maybe he gets to 10 homers. I think that's probably where the projections have him at now. So he's almost a third of the way there. So obviously he's not a power guy, but he was a chalk pick in fantasy baseball drafts back in March, because he was going roughly around 275, 300 overall. Like basically your last pick in a 12-team mixed league, or a fifth outfielder kind of guy, like a corner man MI in your like deeper mixed leagues. He was an afterthought, okay? But he had a little bit of power, as we've seen, like 10 homer power, but he also has great speed, probably 25 plus steal speed. And when I say 25 plus, with the pitch clock, that could mean anywhere from 25 steals to 35, 40 steals. I mean, anyone can steal bases now with the new pitch clock rules. So you're looking at a guy who could basically go 10, 30, and he's also makes good contact. So like 270, 10, 30, 270, that's an easy pick around 275 overall where he was going. And he's your, and also with third base eligibility in some leagues, you're going to have a guy who's like at a position that you cannot find anyone at. Like it's really difficult to find a good third baseman, especially late. There's so few. So yeah, I love Mikel Garcia. I'm a big fan.
I am also a big fan of Michael Garcia, because he might make my Kansas City Royals some money in a trade, maybe make it more likely for them to stay there in Jackson County in Kansas City and not leave us. Gray, another guy that I have loved in fantasy baseball for a long time is this fella by the name of Michael Conforto. He is honestly a pretty incredible player in terms of his skill set for fantasy baseball. The thing I'm worried about with him is that skill set worked a lot better in the smaller stadium there in New York. I mean, he is a lefty power first hitter. That's why you have him on your fantasy baseball roster, not for him to duplicate his 322 batting average season. He's breaking out super early, 3 home runs already. Guys like not getting out at the plate right now. But are we worried, especially in a lot of these industry leagues where like you can't actually trade and stuff, would we be worried that the power upside is just going to be so limited by playing his home games in San Francisco?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Michael Conforto, the biggest problem with him is I believe his shoulder was such an issue for him for a couple of years. So if he's healthy, I think he can hit it out of any park. So I don't necessarily know if the Giants park is going to be that big of an issue for him, but is his shoulder going to hold up over the course of 162 games? That I would say probably not. Like we've seen, now going on almost 4 years where he just has not been able to keep his shoulder healthy. So you got to assume at some point just the wear and tear is going to catch up to him. So if he's got 3 homers now and you're looking at maybe 17 to 20 homers total, yeah, I just think you're going to be disappointed if you hold on to him for the entire season. But, in most leagues, you ride that while he's hot and
Right.
healthy and you take what you can get. And in other leagues, if you can trade him, yeah, I mean, I would probably look to trade him.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely a sell high guy, I would say right now. All right, Gray. So this week in baseball in my life is the text coming in. I can tell you they're all the same, Gray. It's what the heck is going on with the Marlins? That's the text from everybody in the world. Is like, hey, what is going on here? They're 0-8. Very few good performances across the board from an 0-8 team, as you would imagine. One of them is Jake Berger of the Marlins, who is playing third base for them, also playing a little first base. He had 2 home runs the other day in St. Louis in a game that they lost, by the way. And but the story here right now, Gray, is he got 10 runs driven in. I think he's sort of matchup proof, right, Gray, for the Marlins? Like, he's the one guy that I think that kind of can survive this at the end of the year, like the ups and downs maybe for Jazz, the ups and downs for Luis Arias. But I think Berger at the end of the year is going to hit his 25. He's going to drive in his 70. He's going to hit like 260, 270. I think he's pretty predictable and maybe more so than anybody on the Marlins. Right? Oh, we lost Gray.
So I think Jake Berger is one of these classic guys that people in fantasy baseball get pretty excited about, Craig, where the skill set indicates that he is look, I mean, let's just be real, he is playing a little bit above his pay grade right now, and there's not anything wrong with that. He had super high expectations as a first round pick coming out of actually, funnily enough, Missouri State University, which is very close to me. He was the 11th overall pick in the 2017 draft, but he hung around that organization for a while. He's always been just above league average guy. The concern I would have would be career 28%, 28% strikeout, 6% walks. I don't know, Gray. I don't know how long you can play 28% strikeout, 6% walks in the major leagues and not have the power limited as a result of that.
Yeah, I think that with the biggest thing with him is that he's in the middle of a lineup and they don't really have a guy who is a replacement for him. So, and Mish would know better than I would with the Marlins, but I like Jake Berger because he feels like a guy that they're just like going to plug and play, at least for fantasy. I would say he's not going to be the best batting average guy necessarily, but he kind of reminds me of Adam Duvall. So if you remember him when he was in his prime, you're looking at like 27 to 30 homers, 245 to 255 average, 0 speed really, but can hit for power and is a guy who sits in the middle of a lineup that isn't necessarily the best lineup, but for his purposes, that might not be so bad because he's going to sit there and not have any competition for his at bats.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
I thought you were gonna say,
not
by the
having.
way, I thought, Gray, you were going to say Adam Dunn.
Oh,
That's where you were going.
no, I don't think that bad on batting average.
Okay.
Big Dom. I liked Adam Dunn.
We all loved it. We all loved Adam Dunn. Adam Dunn was like the platonic ideal of the perfect corner guy to have on your fantasy baseball team. All right, last guy we've got here, Jarren Duran for the Boston Red Sox is I mean, finally breaking out a little bit. I mean, he was decent last season in 362 plate appearances, 24 stolen bases. He already has 6 stolen bases this season. I mean, he's hitting 400. He's got a 46% OBP right now. I mean, the Red Sox lineup right now, it's not matched by their starting pitching, but the Red Sox lineup 1 through 9 is like pretty fearsome, and he's definitely a part of that.
Yeah, well, like I was saying earlier, Miguel Garcia, if someone with the pitch clock rules, if someone wants to steal, they absolutely can steal. And if they have the speed, then more power to them. And Duran definitely has speed. I mean, he could probably steal 45 plus bags if he wants to. And that's really the difference between someone who can steal 25 bags and 45 bags at this point with the new rules. It's just a matter of want. And I think as the first week has shown, he really seems like he wants to steal. So for fantasy, that's fantastic. And he's hitting leadoff in not necessarily the worst of lineups. And the Red Sox, their home park, really good for Babbitt with the wall. So if he can hit balls off of the wall for like 82 games a season and do okay on the road and hit leadoff, you're looking at a guy, I think he's breaking out. Like, I know it's only 1 week and you don't want to get like too crazy about sample sizes, but I really like Duran. Like, if he can hit 10 homers, steal 40 bags, and hit 260 at the top of the Red Sox lineup, you're looking at a guy who's going to be probably a top 50 overall hitter for fantasy.
All right, Gray, let's end here. The big reality story and fantasy story coming from Oakland this week, as the A's are going to Sacramento, and no longer the Oakland A's. They'll just be called the A's. And then the fantasy story, Gray, Esteury Ruiz. I mean, look, I know he wasn't a top 50 guy, but the A's sent him down to the minor leagues. Imagine drafting this guy in 12-team leagues or AL leagues in fantasy. He played last night. They wanted him to walk more. He walked 3 times last night. That was a shocker, right, to see him go down?
Yeah, no, completely. There was some conspiracies talking about the fact that he was supporting some fan groups that had like an anti-ownership bent. So Ruiz was sent down because of that. And there's also, some talk that he was sent down because of service time. I don't know why he was sent down, but he was not sent down because of performance, because he is what he is. I mean, it's not like he's going to become a different player in the minor leagues. You either trade him or you play him in the majors, because that's who Ruiz is.
Yeah, very, very surprising outcome to all of that. All right, great to catch up with you, Gray. Thanks again for coming on. Have a great rest of your weekend.
All right, thank you.
All right, Gray Albright from Razzball with us here on the show. Craig and Davis back with you. Coming up next, we have the SportsGrid 60 and then game time decisions. Huge games tonight, by the way, in college basketball. For those of you who are unfamiliar, it is the Final Four coming up tonight. 2 games with 2 big point spreads, by the way, tonight. Purdue a big favorite over NC State. And wouldn't you know, Alabama's a big dog against UConn tonight. Will we get a big upset in the Final Four? I guess we'll find out. Again, that show is coming up next. We'll be back to wrap it up right after this. Great.
NC State, the Cinderella story continues.
Creates a double team and then gets an assist. 3 assists already. Everything's going through the big man.
Maybe one of the most dominant runs now with double-digit wins and 2 straight NCAA tournaments we have seen in quite some time in the Big Ten.
Zach Edey does throw elbows. Zach Edey does duck in with his shoulder. Zach Edey does initiate a lot of contact.
Bama runs a style that can challenge them and upset them.
Only on SportsGrid.
Jason Tatum has games where he has stinkers. He shoots a 4 for 16. Jaylen Brown in the playoffs gets exposed because he can't go left. Porzingis gets old. Sometimes Drew Holiday's not consistent. Al Horford father time to catch up. That being said, I still think they're going to the NBA Finals and winning it. And I'm a Knicks fan. I hate the Celtics with all of my might.
Betting above the rim, only on SportsGrid.
Memphis owns it. They beat them 5 straight times. And Memphis is awful. So what does that say about the Bucks? They're the most overrated team in the NBA, hands down.
Michigan and Boston College, there's going to be goals scored in this game. But with being stated, the total's up to 7.5 right now. I got to go under 7.5 here, Scott.
Pharrell Coast to Coast, only on SportsGrid. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid. Your 24/7 sports wagering network. The early line.
Magical and historic season in Lincoln, Nebraska continues.
He is the best player in the NBA, but also in the biggest moments where the national media is watching.
Newswire.
Something that we have never seen happen before with one of the iconic coaches in the game.
Pharrell Coast to Coast.
The team covers. It's automatic. It's every time. Not sometimes. It's every time.
Game time decisions.
Luka is actually far more dangerous from three on the road this year than at home.
This game here tonight, you may want to consider taking as many points as humanly possible.
In-game live. Prime time.
We got not one, but two coaches fired systems in place.
Sports Rage
This
Late
sort of
Night.
has letdown written all over it. It's going to be hard to match the emotion that they played with the other night.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
All right, before we send you off to game time decisions, let's have one final thought here on the show. It's time for Davis and I to end with 60 seconds of commentary. It is the Sports Grid 60.
Look, this is it's not a brand new original thought here in the Sports Grid 60, but I did definitely have a moment last night watching Iowa versus the University of Connecticut that I was just like, it is very, very cool that everyone in my life right now is all watching the same sporting event, and it's the women's Final Four. I mean, that it's just, there's no way around it. It's just very cool. It's very cool to have opinions on, not just Paige Beckers and Caitlin Clark, but I'm like, this Iowa point guard is good, man. This Gabby Marshall, or this Kate Martin, she's getting buckets. Like, I just thought it was awesome. I really, and by the way, at the end, it's a foul. I mean, sure, maybe it sucks to have it called in the last 4 seconds of a close game, but if you don't want to get called for the moving screen, then don't set the moving screen in that moment. But yeah, it was just a very cool game, and super excited to watch the Iowa-South Carolina final on Sunday.
Yep, Sunday night championship in women's basketball. Okay, so, fantasy baseball season is here, so that means baseball season is here for me, and that means a really busy time because I spent a lot of time in South Florida covering the Marlins, and they're 0-8. This is getting bad here. Like, they need to win a game pretty soon here. It's getting to be sort of desperate times here. Now, look, they're not chasing down the Orioles all-time losing streak to begin a season yet, but who knows what another week will hold. They play the Cardinals today and tomorrow, and then the Yankees, and then the Braves after that. So a win would be nice, hopefully, for the Marlins here coming up soon. All right, that'll do it for the show. Thanks again to our producer, Sam, for Davis. I'm Craig. I hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend right here on Sports Grid. I'll see you Monday for our next edition of Newswire, if not next Saturday for FST. Have a great Saturday, everyone. See ya.